Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, and big thanks to the Accelerator for having me today, and getting to share a little bit about the good lawyer journey and how I went from the world of corporate law and found my way to founding a startup of my own. So, as is going to become evident in my presentation today, I've seen it on both sides of the spectrum. I've been the practicing lawyer offering the services, and I've also been the founder who has had to rely on a lot of other lawyers to help us get to where we're at today. So I think you did a great job at explaining what Good Lawyer is. We've built a platform truly dedicated to entrepreneurs, startups, small business owners who frankly are a little bit left out when it comes to getting accessible, affordable legal help that they really need to thrive as a business. So part of the theme of my presentation as well is going to be about explaining why, lawyers are really important, especially to startups, and they should be viewed more as a trusted advisor, a business partner that you can leverage to really accelerate your business, as opposed to just a really expensive service provider. I remember charging out at $400 an hour, and we're trying to break that mold with a platform that makes it affordable for entrepreneurs and startups, and also helps out lawyers that are looking to build their practice. So Good Lawyer is really the bridge between those two things. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, and one of my co-founders, Tom, helped me whip this up this morning. So it's a little bare bones, but it's going to provide some points and some context to really the two main issues that I'm going to discuss today, which are when you need a lawyer and the types of things that a lawyer as a startup is going to help you out with. So with that, let's get going. Hi, my name is Brett. So, as I mentioned, I was a corporate lawyer. I worked at one of the big shops here in Canada for about 4 years, and, just couldn't handle billing out at $400 an hour anymore. The number of companies I had to turn away just because they couldn't afford my rates started to really eat at me. And as you can see with the big grin there on the right, really enjoying what we're doing, trying to build this new way to access legal help that businesses need so dearly. So when do you need a lawyer? Not right away. So tip number one, don't jump the gun. I always like to refer to a book that myself and a lot of the Good Lawyer team have really dove into, and it's called The Mom Test. And it's completely not legal related, but I wanted to bring it up because that is really the first stage of the business. And the Mom Test is all about how to talk to customers. So, for all of the entrepreneurs and startup founders on the call today, you've got this great idea, but a great idea to you might not be a great idea to the market. So it's really important in the early stages that you get that customer validation. You ask the questions, you get out of the office and you talk to people to make sure that this great idea you have is something that people are willing to pay for. Is this something that people want? So until you've figured out the answer to that question, you don't need a lawyer. You don't need to worry about cap tables and share structures and trademarks at that really early stage. It's really about, is this an idea that people are interested in outside of my little network? And until that point, you really want to be careful not to jump the gun, not just with legal services, but sort of everything. So tip number one, don't jump the gun. Tip number two, read the internet. So, this is a little bit coy, but what I'm trying to get at here is there's a ton of great information, whether it's blogs or articles or guides. Google startup law, Google startup legal issues, Google the thing that you think you're worrying about, and start to increase your vernacular, increase your understanding of, not trying to become a lawyer, but having a better understanding of the world that you're playing in, so that when you do engage a professional, which, as many of you who have engaged a lawyer, if many of you have, it's not cheap. So you want to be really prepared when you go into those meetings. And my tip there is, again, start by reading the internet, read some blogs. Don't feel like you need to understand everything, but just by going through that exercise, you're really going to increase your baseline knowledge, which is going to make all of your interactions with a professional way more effective as you go on. So tip number two, read the internet. Just going to switch back to this guy. Number three, still not hiring a lawyer, but you've got some of that validation. You've got some people that are joining you, and you really do start to need to think about, are there legal issues? At the classic verbiage in the lawyer world is the unknown unknowns. What don't you even know is an issue? So this is where, you've done a little bit of reading, you've got a very rough idea of what's going on from a legal perspective, but not much. Now is the time that you really want to engage some of the free legal resources. And good lawyers partnered with universities across the country. There's other organizations that tie into a lot of these university hubs. Organizations like Accelerator typically have some sort of a relationship with a legal service provider, and lawyers are keen to help startups because there is such a opportunity for huge gains down the road. Startups, as we've seen the unicorns of the world grow into truly massive companies. So with the community built a lot through the universities, but also great organizations like Accelerator, Good Lawyer puts on free webinars almost every week. So really try to take advantage of some of these free legal resources when the time is right. So you can, again, begin to flesh out a bit more of what the cost will be, as well as what the opportunities are. So tip number three, take advantage of some free legal help resources. And like I said, just as an example, Good Lawyer does free webinars every week, whether it's on IP or on contracts or on business structure or on hiring contractors. So we provide those, but there's a lot of other awesome organizations that provide these free legal help sessions as well. The one caveat I would add is the legal aid organizations and a lot of the, in Calgary legal guidance, a lot of those pro bono organizations are really focused on criminal law and family. So if you see legal aid, it might feel like it's an opportunity to get some free legal help, have a lawyer work on your business, but it really isn't. Those types of organizations are really focused on truly impoverished Canadians and trying to help them through the court process, whether it be in a criminal matter or a family law matter. So those aren't the greatest options, but there are a lot of organizations like Good Lawyer, like the Accelerator, that will have some free legal help that you can access. So again, before you go and start spending the big bucks on a lawyer, take advantage of these free options and keep educating yourself so you're prepared to maximize that time when you actually talk to a lawyer. So step number four, find a lawyer that you trust. I think the name for my company stemmed from that exact idea. Everybody's looking for that good lawyer, both from a competency level, but also, a lawyer that you can trust, that has your best interest at heart. I think lawyers get a lot of slag, and frankly, rightfully so. And that's really the model that I experienced as a practitioner, and the model that we're trying to break with Good Lawyer, because it's just so inefficient through the traditional law firm. And the number of times I've heard a client, get the bill at the end of the day and they're just flabbergasted. How did it, rise to $12,000? What have you done? And you get your little time entries and all these things. So, not just buying into the traditional model because, the lawyer's in a suit and, they're in the big office downtown, so it feels like that's where you should be. It probably isn't, especially early on in your startup career. So, you got to find a lawyer you can trust. You can push back on prices more than you think. Not so much on Good Lawyer because we post the fixed fee prices, but with a traditional lawyer, don't just cave to what they're asking, and make sure that you do your best to get a price up front, because the last thing you want to do is have lawyers like I used to do at the big shop clocking every 6 minutes, because every 6 minutes costs you a lot of money. So once you've done as much as you can in educating yourself, which I think is imperative for any startup founder, you really do need a baseline understanding of the legal world you work in, because the legal piece of a startup is so much more complicated than, the first business I ever ran was a painting business, and that didn't necessitate a lot of legal help, but the startup always does. So you got to make sure that you find a lawyer you can trust. So that's when you need to find a lawyer. And maybe I'll just add one other note to that. Um, Stakeholders. When you start bringing in, it's no longer just an idea in your head. You're bringing in other people. You're bringing in co-founders. You're bringing in hopefully investment. You're starting to hire contractors or employees. You have customers. When you start having any of these types of stakeholders, that's when defining the rights, and you do that by a contract, becomes super, super important. So when it's the idea in your head, don't worry about hiring a lawyer. Get out there, use the mom test, talk to customers, figure out if this is an idea worth pursuing. And when it's ready and it's time to get serious and you're bringing other people in, that's when you really need to find that lawyer you can trust. Next piece, the types of things that you're going to want to talk to a lawyer about. So good lawyer put together what we coined the legal health checklist. And this is really just a 2-page document that works through the questions that a lawyer would ask you if you were to walk into their office totally fresh, with your great startup idea and a few stakeholders. So the legal health checklist really breaks down, and again, it's intended to be it's intended to cue you as to the issues that you should think about. So not every question in the legal health checklist is going to be pertinent to every startup, but it's a really good exercise to go through the legal health checklist. And I'm going to make sure that we share a copy of this with the accelerator, so any folks that are interested can take a look. But it's intended to probe the entrepreneur to go through the types of legal issues that might be important for their business. So, some of them will apply to every company. Are you incorporated? If you have stakeholders and you're a startup, you should be incorporated without question. You don't want to be taking that personal liability on. And frankly, you just look a little less professional to any of the stakeholders if you haven't incorporated. So that's kind of the starting point when you're ready to get serious. Is you got to get incorporated. You got to make sure your share structure and all those stakeholders I mentioned have clearly defined rights and also clearly defined obligations. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So step one, learning about you and your business. And then actually one other point I want to make here is where your business is going is going to have a huge impact on the types of legal needs you have. So if you want to run a consulting business, out of your basement, your legal needs, nice lifestyle business, your legal needs are going to be vastly different than if you're trying to become the next Uber. So really sharing your current state, but also future goals with a lawyer is super important, because that's going to that is going to dictate how you set your company up from a legal perspective. So the second bucket, so the first bucket, understand your business. The second bucket, now we're getting into the legal meat, is how is your business organized? As I mentioned, are you incorporated? Who are the founders? What happens if a founder leaves? Is there vesting? And vesting is a concept that the founders earn in for time served. So really important concept. One experience that I had running Good Lawyer, and this is, coming from a lawyer that's started a startup with another lawyer. Some of these things we didn't have ironed out. And, that was very early in our careers, but some of these things weren't ironed out. And he actually went back to private practice. The startup life wasn't for him. It's not made for everyone, that is for sure. And luckily, we were able to come to a very good resolution for everyone involved. And me and Steve are still buddies. But if that conversation hadn't gone well, we could have been hooped, and Good Lawyer could have died right there. So making sure that you have these agreements in place as between co-founders or early investors, and then ensuring that you've gone through the exercise with with your lawyer, and sort of hypothesized these, it's kind of like a prenup. What if something bad happens? Everybody, when you're signing that agreement, is gung-ho, keen, optimistic. But what happens if it falls apart? And what happens if a co-founder leaves? So again, when you're ready for that step, you validated it, you're ready to really sink a ton of time, resources, and money into this project, you really need to define those rights and obligations, and you need a good lawyer to do that for you. The next big bucket, just bear with me one second here. The next big bucket, intellectual property. So IP is important for a lot of businesses. IP is imperative for startups. And protecting your IP early on, or at least having a direction and an understanding of when and how you will need to protect it, which, a lot of this you could really decipher once you have a good understanding of what you think is the protectable piece, whether that's your brand, whether that's some new code you developed, whether that's a product you designed, and taking that to an IP specialist, you're going to get a much better, I think the best way to put it would be roadmap of how you're going to protect that IP as you go along. So IP super important for startups, and we're going to share a promo code at the end, and a 15-minute call with an IP lawyer, unbelievable value, like huge value. And you really want to do that early on. As soon as you're done validating, you got to have an idea of what IP you have and what IP you want to protect, because that's going to have a huge bearing on what the value of the company is from an investor perspective. Because you got to remember, one of the biggest things for investors is, how do you defend your product? What is the defensibility like? And IP is an excellent way to answer that question for investors. Next bucket, employees and contractors. So this one's probably a little more straightforward. When you're engaging a contractor or you're bringing on an employee, you need agreements, and you need agreements that assign their IP to you. So if the contractor is working on something great for, Good Lawyer in this example, Good Lawyer owns that content or that product. And if you don't have a proper contractor or employment agreement in place that actually benefits the company when it comes to that assignment of IP, you can run into some issues down the road. So again, these are straightforward things that you need to do when you're starting to bring stakeholders into the game. You really got to define the rights and obligations and make sure everybody's on the same page when it comes to who owns this new piece of code, or, does the company own that great brand that this design company just provided us with? Can they use that elsewhere? So employees and contractors, when you're bringing them in, you really got to make sure that you have a proper agreement in place to protect yourself and the company. The last bucket that we touch on, and this one is by far the broadest bucket, is commercial business relationships and contracts. So, one of the most common services that we offer on Good Lawyer is our $25 per page contract review. And it's been hugely popular because so many entrepreneurs and startups are signing contracts they don't understand. And they don't want to not understand it, but lawyers are so expensive and scary that we tend to just sign contracts because it's easy. So, that's why we implemented this 2-day turnaround for contract reviews, trying to make it accessible for, the small guys, the early stage startups, the solo entrepreneurs, to actually be able to talk to a lawyer, understand what they're signing, make sure they're not getting screwed, and do so without breaking the bank. So my number one comment there would just be, never sign something that you don't understand. And for all the engineers in the house too, you think you might understand it, but for a few bucks, it really often is worth getting a little bit of that insight from a lawyer, because not only have they been trained in this, but they've seen these deals before, and they can give you suggestions as to better deal terms and the like, just because they've been, experienced this area and seen companies that don't look just like you, but look similar enough that we can start negotiating contract terms. So never sign something you don't understand. And that was it for me in terms of the hard content. Again, half an hour is pretty quick to get through this, but I hope that some of what I said would be insightful and, really gets you thinking about, you got to dip your toes into this water, read the internet, take advantage of the free resources. Again, I put them up here. Good Lawyer throws in webinars every week on these various areas I discussed, totally free, drop in, And then for anyone that is in the middle of a startup and has some specific questions, please feel free to use the promo code XLR Raider and check out Good Lawyer. We'd love to help. So with that, if there's any questions, I am more than happy to take them with the last 5 minutes here.
Thank you so much, Brett. We do have a couple questions here for you. First one is, what stage is it best for a startup to look into getting legal help?
When you're starting to bring in other stakeholders. So again, a lot of entrepreneurs have a great idea in their brain and they're percolating on it, and then they rush to incorporate this business to soon find out, actually nobody cares about that yo-yo. This isn't a great idea. And now I have, yo-yo incorporated and I just spent $1,000 to do that. So don't jump the gun. But when you're starting to bring in other stakeholders, whether it's co-founders, employees, investors, or you start selling to customers, it's really important that you talk to a lawyer. Again, try some of the free options to get your bearings, but you just don't want to mess around with the liabilities and the risks, both for someone suing you down the road, but also if you have investor in if you're looking to raise money, having those legal ducks in a row early. And I've seen startups that have been unable to close rounds because the investors couldn't wrap their head around the crazy convertible notes that they've been offering to random people. So making sure you have your ducks in a row early on, again, past that validation stage or that early validation stage. But when you start bringing in other stakeholders, it's really imperative you talk to a lawyer.
Perfect. Thank you. Second one, what are some key things for startups when they're setting up their legal structure for their business?
Where are you at? Who's involved? So, again, I'm just going to use the co-founder example. If you and a few friends come together or some colleagues with this great business idea, it's really important to delineate the roles and responsibilities of everybody and make sure that everyone is on the same page as to what their piece of the pie is. So it depends is the classic lawyer answer. It depends on what you're doing. Because again, I mentioned earlier, if you're trying to run the lifestyle business out of your basement, which is fantastic, love entrepreneurs that do that, your business structure is going to look a whole lot different than if you're trying to become the next Uber. So, our vernacular for startups is a little broader than just the heavy tech startups, but for the heavy tech startups, the starting point is going to be getting incorporated, making sure your share structure has the flexibility required to bring in that investment later. And these are things that you can fix too. So don't think that if you went to the registry and incorporated, which I don't recommend, you're hooped, because all of these things can be fixed down the road. They're just going to cost more money down the road if you don't do it right at the outset. But really clearly defining, I think honestly, the one that I like to really highlight is what happens if somebody leaves? And so that is going to really play into, because you got your share structure, you got your business incorporated, but now you have a shareholders agreement. And that is the document that's going to really delineate what happens if someone leaves. Do they give equity back? Do they give all the equity back? Do they keep it? So these types of things. Those would be some of the key things I would say.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. We're coming towards the end of this session, but we have time for one more question. Is it a good idea to create a holding company for IP or just keep it in the same as the operation? We are a SaaS for trucking companies and have created a lot of IP.
Yeah. So Gary, I think this would be a great question to use that promo and talk to an IP lawyer about specifically. But to give you I'm admittedly not an IP specialist, so take this with a grain of salt. But what I think you're discussing there is really it would come down to how you want to use the IP. So if you wanted to license the IP to other companies and you wanted to somehow separate that from the trucking service that you're doing right now, that would be the primary motive in my mind to create a holding co. Good Lawyer has IP. There's only one Good Lawyer. we haven't felt the need to separate that because everything is under one roof and all of our eggs are in this basket. So, to the extent you were to separate the IP into a holding co, which would presumably not be owned by the main trucking co, you're going to dilute the value of the holding co. So again, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're looking for investors to invest in the trucking co, they're probably going to be less excited if the IP is owned by a separate entity.
Got it. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful advice, Brett. We are coming to the next part of the program. So thank you so much for joining us and all of your fantastic advice.
Check us out, goodlawyer.ca.
Thank you very much.